बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देवदेव। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तिसुदेशिकेन्द्रं द्वैपायनं सूत्रकृतं मुनीन्द्रं श्रीशङ्करं भाष्यकृतं यतीन्द्रं मद्देशिकञ्चापि नमामि विद्यै। ॐ नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्यासम्प्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितप्रज्ञानगणः प्रत्यगर्तो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला। अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णाः खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तकः केशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगण्डोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं। लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थितदद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ॐ कृष्णाय परमात्मने नमः। Pranams everyone. We are doing chapter 13, sloka number 8. We have started with the values. And Bhagavan gave these values to Arjuna as preparatory steps for a sadhaka to attain this jnanam. And Bhagavan said, amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham sthairyamatma vinigrahah. So we had a set of 20 values were given in the slokas, and in this particular sloka number 8 Bhagavan gave 9 values. And we had seen amanitvam, adambhitvam, amanitvam being humility, adambhitvam being simplicity, ahimsa is not to hurt anybody, kshanti we saw that as 2, forbearance, which is titiksa, and the ability to forgive. So kshanti, amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, kshanti. Arjavam we saw that to be uprightness, Satyam being one of the subsets of Stairyam, And then we saw Acharya Upasanam. Acharya Upasanam is basically the Guru Seva. So we had seen until there, and we saw how Guru Seva is necessary for us to build Chitta Shuddhi, to get the benefit of the words of Guru, the Shastra. To do Karma Yoga is essential. And one of the Karma Yoga, one of the karma or one of the duty of a Shishya is to do Guru Seva. And we saw the benefits as well. So we had seen until this in the last class. The next value that we have to take up is Soucham. Soucham is the seventh value. Soucham means purity, cleanliness. And there are two types of Soucham, two types of cleanliness. One is Bahyam and the other one is Antaram. Bahya means external cleanliness, and then Antaram means internal cleanliness. External cleanliness, we are all aware. The place we live, the things we use to make sure that we always wear only washed clothes, and we actually sweep our house, the floors of the house, we mop them, we keep it clean. And we also wash our body also. We regularly take shower to clean our body from all the impurities. So body, clothes, the things we use, whatever we use, we clean it. So the house we live, we paint it, repaint it, clean it, all those things. If we have a vehicle, we clean the vehicle as well, the car. So to keep it clean is Bahya Soucham. Bahya Soucham is important, but people only restrict themselves only to Bahya Soucham. They bother only about the outside cleanliness, some people. Anything that can be seen by others, they are only worried about those things. That's why when we have some visitors or guests coming to our house, we know that they are going to only be in the living room. Then we keep the living room cleaned up. We do not bother about what is inside the other rooms, because we know that they are not going to come into the other rooms. So we only bother about what other people are able to see. We typically our mindset works like that. Because cleanliness, when we talk about cleanliness, it costs effort, it costs time, it costs sometimes money also for outside, keeping our house and external things clean. But more than the external cleanliness, internal cleanliness is very important. And here Bhagavan is saying about both forms of cleanliness, but more so on the internal cleanliness. And how do we ensure that we follow this cleanliness? We need to have this awareness about cleanliness, about why something should be kept clean. If it is not kept clean, then we will get some diseases, we will have some issues with health. We know that, and that's why we want to keep our body and our things clean. So the importance of being clean has to be brought into our mind again and again. When we talk about Antara cleanliness, Antaram, what are the internal things that we are talking about here? There are three things that we need to be aware of. One is our mind. The mind has to be clean. Second, the intellect. What is intellect? Cleanliness of intellect, we'll see that in a minute. And then the memory. So the mind, intellect and memory, all these three have to be kept clean. All these three are part of Sukshma Shariram. Sukshma Shariram, for people who had already done the introduction to Vedanta classes, they had attended, they would be able to relate. Sukshma Shariram. So there are three types of bodies we saw. One is basically Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram and Karana Shariram. The external cleanliness is about the Stula Shariram and whatever we use. Then Antara Soucham is about Sukshma Sharira cleanliness, which includes the mind, intellect and memory. When we talk about mind, when we talk about a clean mind, what do we mean? A clean mind is one which does not think ill of others, which does not think ill of others, which does not think bad about others, does not give any kind of sharp to others. That is called as clean mind. When we talk about intellect, intellect is about not having a sharp intellect. Not having a sharp intellect is called as clean intellect. A clean intellect means a constructive intellect. A sharp mind, if it actually works for destructive activities, then it is not a Antara Soucham. It doesn't have Antara Soucham. Here we are talking about a constructive intellect. And then when it comes to memory we are talking about thinking only of good things. If we hear something bad, then to ensure that it doesn't go into the memory. That is considered to be a clean memory. A clean memory is one which does not have any kind of bad memories. It only stores good things. So this is the Soucham that Bhagavan is talking about. How can we get this Antara Soucham? How can we build this Antara Soucham? We saw initially there were 13 steps, 13 different tips to actually get this, follow these values. One of them was Pratipaksha Bhavana. Pratipaksha Bhavana means working on the opposite of the vice that we are talking about. So when we talk about mind, when we talk about a clean mind is one which is devoid of all the 6 impurities, the 6 major impurities. And what are the 6 major impurities of the mind? We know Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moham, Madam, Matsaryam. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Madam, Matsaryam. Kama means basically the desire. So voracious desire to anything that I want to have it, I want to take it, I want that feeling. So how do we actually work with that Pratipaksha Bhavana? We have to build something on the opposite, and the opposite of Kama is Vairagya. So we'll have to work on our Vairagya, dispassion. So if we work on dispassion, we will be able to reduce our Kama. Then if we talk about Krodha is anger. How do we work against anger? So if I am a person who gets angry easily, then I will have to work on building my patience. So I should be looking to build Shantihi. So what should I do to build patience? I will have to do, which is what we had already seen. Then we saw Lobham. In Titiksha we saw how to build patience. So Lobham is basically greed. And if I have this feeling that I want to hoard things, if I have this general feeling of hoarding things, then I will have to work on the Pratipaksha Bhavana, which is Dhanam, charity. I will have to force myself to donate things. Initially, it will be difficult to part with things, especially those that I consider to be mine. But over a period of time, when I work on this Dhanam, I will be able to overcome this feeling of Lobham. Then we talk about Moham. Moham is delusion. Delusion is basically giving something a value that is much higher than what it is actually worth for. This Moham is delusion. It comes out of ignorance sometimes. So this Moham, if I have to, the Pratipaksha Bhavana is Jnanam. I will have to get an understanding of the knowledge behind it. So moham is delusion. Delusion, we will be seeing more about delusion as we go into Bhagavad Gita. We will see where are the areas and where are the places where we have this delusion. We will see them in detail there. And how do I work against it? I build jnanam. And then matam. Matam is pride. I am so and so. I have this feeling. I am so and so. I am of this. I work for this company. I am in this position. I live in this particular area. I have this particular degree. All those things. Or I am young. The Pratipaksha Bhavana is humility, Vinayam. So we'll have to work on Vinayam, building humility, which we saw in Adambitvam, Amanitvam. And then Matsaryam. Matsaryam is basically jealousy. I'm jealous about somebody. I may not be even aware of it. So how do I overcome that? I force myself to do praise, stutihi. So I try to praise someone. Forcibly, I force myself to praise that person in public or with others or to that person himself or herself. Over a period of time, I'll be able to overcome jealousy. So this is about how to build this Soucham, Antara Soucham. In other words, generally our tendency is our gunas are tamo pradhana gunas. All these gunas, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsaryam, are all tama pradhana gunas. From tama pradhana gunas, we will have to slowly move to raja pradhana, and from rajas to sattva. So we will have to move from tamas to sattva through rajas. Another way of actually building this Soucham is, as usual, bhakti, satsangam. All these things will slowly bring a change in our mindset. So this is how we build Antara Soucham. So this was the 7th value that Bhagavan gave, Soucham. Then we will go to the 8th one, Stairyam. Stairyam is steadfastness. Another name for this is basically Dhritihi, steadfastness or Dhritihi, being steadfast. So being steadfast, Stairyam, having this kind of I will do it, I have this willpower, as you can call it, as this, having this steadfastness in for good things is good. So if I want to actually say I want to do this sadhakana, I want to wake up early and therefore I want to be steadfast in that, having that is good. So being steadfast, and Bhagavan talks about being steadfast where? Both for the sadhyam, I want to, as well as for the sadhana. Sadhyam meaning I want to ensure that I am steadfast, that I want to achieve the goal of moksha, having that steadfastness, and being steadfast in the process of how to achieve moksha, in the sadhanas that I have to follow. Both of them I need to have this Stairyam. Sometimes what happens is, if the sadhanas are difficult, or if somehow I am not able to follow the sadhanas, then what I do, I change my sadhyam itself, I change my goal itself. So that should not happen. So we will have to be steadfast both in the sadhyam as well as sadhana. So when Bhagavan says here, he says steadfastness towards moksha. And how do I make sure that I am steadfast towards that goal? First I have to understand what is my parama sadhyam, what is my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is moksha, but I am not going to get there immediately. So I will have to split them into step by step. I have to shorten my sadhyams. I have to give a step-by-step understanding of how do I get there. I break it down into smaller sadhyams, smaller goals. Just like somebody wants to become a CEO of a company, or run a company at the age of 5th standard or primary school. It's not possible to do it in the same immediately. So that has to be broken, right? First they will have to clear primary school, then secondary school, then higher secondary or junior college, and then into degree. So there is a smaller goals to actually look for. So in the same way, we will have to break our goals, Paramasadhyam, into smaller goals. And again, when we are in this path, I again remind you, only for spiritual path, only for these good things, only for good goals, we will face difficulties. So we have to understand that we have to overcome that. So how can we be steadfast? How can we do it? For being steadfast, for getting this steadfastness, other values will help us. Other values, like for example, titiksha. Titiksha meaning forbearance, patience. We saw that. Titiksha, only people with titiksha can take real firm steps. So we have to practice titiksha even when there is no trouble around us, even when there is no difficulty that we are facing. We will have to put ourselves in certain difficult situations to be able to practice titiksha. So by titiksha, we build this steadfastness. The other one is Vairagya. Vairagya is dispassion, we saw. See, sometimes what happens is, the sukha that we get, the comfort that we are in, will make us forget the lakshya or the goal. Suppose the goal is to actually wake up early and chant something every morning without fail. Then sometimes on nice air conditioned room, or in the month of January, February, if it is really cool and we are asleep, we don't want to wake up. So the sukham that we get, the comfort that we get, can make us forget the lakshya. So we will have to have that vairagya and then get over that desire for comfort, and then proceed with the goal, proceed with our sadhanas. See, as I said, whenever we start something good, or whenever we want to do something good, initially there will be difficulties. So God will also give us, Bhagavan will give us difficulties, trouble. And if we are able to overcome that, Bhagavan will give us sukham to test us. He will give us comfort. Whether we are also falling for it, we have to overcome that and then cross over to get into this lakshya, to get into, to be on the path of spirituality. The best example is Nachiketa example. In Kathopanishad, when Nachiketa wanted to actually understand what is life after death, when he went to meet Yamaraja, Yamadharmaraja said, he made him wait for 3 days. Yamadharmaraja wasn't available. So Nachiketa waited for 3 days without food or water outside the gates of his palace. So there was difficulty. And then he was still steadfast. He still waited for Yamadharmaraja. And when Yamadharmaraja came, Yamadharmaraja offered him wealth. He offered him wealth, kingdom, and he said, why don't you just go back and live happily? But Nachiketa was very particular that he wanted to know what is life after death, what is moksha and others, and therefore he did not fall for it. So in the same way, Bhagavan will test us with difficulties and also with sukham. We will have to overcome that. So for difficulties, it is titiksha. For sukham, we'll have to overcome that with vairagya. And of course, the third one is mumukshutva, the desire for sadhyam, the ultimate goal, moksham. I have to have that keen desire for it. And as long as I keep building my desire, the steadfastness increases. So that is why we need to build this mumukshutva. Of course, the fourth one, the last one, is not getting disheartened by failure. So we will have this failure. We may falter here and now. We might get angry. We might get jealousy. We might have all these problems, but we will have to pick ourselves up and move forward. We should not stay there, or we should not get disheartened that this is not for me. We should pick ourselves up, and we have to tell ourselves how big my lakshya is, how big my goal is. Obviously, it is not going to be easy. I am going to fail on the way, but I will pick myself up and will proceed. It doesn't matter. As somebody said, in every success, may you be encouraged. In every success, may you be encouraged. As in, be encouraged, do not take pride in it. So in every success, may you be encouraged. In every failure, may you be strengthened. So we should build our strength from there. That failure should not bring despair. Failure should bring strength. So that way we can build stairyam. So this is the 8th value. Amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, shanti, arjavam, acharyopasanam, Soucham, stairyam. Now the 8th one is Atma Vinigraha. Ninth one is, last one is Atma Vinigraha. In this sloka, the last one is Atma Vinigraha. Atma Vinigraha means the body-mind, this body-mind complex that we have, control on this body and mind. Atma here means body-mind complex, the body, the sense organs and the mind. Atma in Bhagavad Gita comes in various places, and in various places the Atma takes a different meaning. Some places Atma means Paramatma, some places Atma means Jivatma, some places Atma means Sukshma Shariram, some places Atma means body. So depending on the context, the word has to be interpreted. So that's why it is very important that Bhagavad Gita cannot be read on its own and understood. It has to be through the teachings of the Guru, from a parampara. So in this case, Atma Vinigraha means body-mind complex control. Vinigraha means discipline, control. Or we can say directed, a well-directed body-mind. See, now in our body, the sense organs that we have, the 5 sense organs that we have, they are called as Karanam. Karanam meaning instruments. The sense organs are the instruments for us to understand the world. I see the world through my eyes. So the color and the form of objects are gathered by the instrument called eye. The sound that is around me is gathered through the instrument called ears. So the sense organs are called as Karanam or instruments. And the sense organs are controlled by mind. The mind is controlled by intellect. The intellect is called as Karta. Karta meaning doer, or the owner here, the controller, Karta. My intellect tells me where I should see, what I should hear, where I should go. So that is the Karta, the intellect. Just as a driver would want the car, when you drive a car, the driver would want the car to go to a particular place. So the driver will direct the car where the car needs to go to. Similarly, the intellect should drive the body and the sense organs, the mind, the intellect should drive the body, mind and sense organ to where it should need to go, what it should hear, what it should do and others. So the intellect should control it. When we say this, especially in spirituality, when we say the intellect should drive or control things, some people will argue, some people don't like the word control. Why should why should we control things? Why should we not let things be as it is? Some will even say that, Bhagavan created this world, or God created this world, and all the sense organs, He gave the sense organs for us to actually enjoy this world. And therefore, these should not be controlled. We should just let the sense organs enjoy the world. But what we fail to understand is Ishvara has also given us that intellect. Ishvara has also given us that free will. That intellect and free will has been given for a purpose. And that purpose is to direct and discipline the sense organs. It is about controlling the sense organs. It is about disciplining the sense organs. The intellect has been given for that purpose. The problem for us is, if we do not let that intellect control, the body, it gets attached. It becomes kind of a slave for some of the comforts. If it has been used to air-conditioned environment always, it cannot be away from, in a slightly humid place for even a short period of time. The body will crave for that comfort, because the body has become slave to that comfort. Similarly, the sense organs as well. The tongue, that it gets enslaved to certain tastes. The ears get enslaved, the nose gets enslaved, the skin gets enslaved. Everything becomes slave of certain external situations. And therefore, whenever comforts reduce, or whenever a situation change, even the mind, for that matter, even the mind gets attached to certain situations. The mind likes certain situations, the mind does not like certain situations. The mind likes certain companies, the mind does not like certain companies. So whenever the situation changes, or whenever their comforts reduce, then immediately our mind goes through sorrow. Our mind goes through sorrow. We are unable to take it. There is a feeling of dukkham. So that is why we should not get our body or sense organs enslaved. We have to understand that the needs are different from wants. What is need? What is want? Right now, each one have their own scale. We have our own, every person have their own scale to actually determine what is a need, what is a want. But we'll have to reflect ourselves and say, how much is the need is really a need, or can I actually move it to my wants? That is what everybody will have to reflect and take decision of their own. The body, we should understand, should be given this basic needs. Healthy food is necessary, and similarly for the sense organs, shamaha, damaha is important. The sense control is important. Similarly for mind, shamaha is important. The mind control is important. Just as body is given some healthy food, the sense organs should also be fed healthy stuff. The mind should also be fed healthy stuff. And just like the body's health is decided by what is consumed as food. If I take too much of oily stuff, my body gets cholesterol. If I take too much of sugar, my body gets diabetes. So just like my body's health is determined by what is consumed as food, similarly my mind's health is decided by what is consumed by my senses. For my mind, for that body, for that Sukshma Sharira, for that subtle body, the consumption comes from various sense organs. And what do I get as a result? So just like diabetes or blood pressure or cholesterol or the issues that my physical body faces, my mind will have health issues like greed, anger, pride, all those things. So those are the problems of the mind. The sense organs have been given for a specific purpose. Bhagavan gave these sense organs for Vyavaharika, for Vyavahara, for transaction. They have to be used for transaction. They are also used for bhoga, for enjoyment. Everybody would like to have some tasty food. Everybody would like to have some kind of good music, hear good music, or everybody would like to see some good nature. Bhagavan says, yes, use it for Vyavahara correctly. Use less for bhoga. Do not get attached to this bhoga. Do not think that the sense organs have been given only for the purpose of bhoga, only for the purpose of enjoyment. Remember, any organ that we use extensively loses its strength and power. Everything has got a wear and tear. And that is also true for sense organs. That's why you say if you watch too much of television, the eye gets problem. So any sense organ, if we use too much, will have its wear and tear. So sense organs have to be controlled through control of sense organs is called as damaha. So damaha. So when we say atma vinigraha, damaha is for sense control. Then we have shamaha. Shamaha means the mind control. Remember, the mind also gets disturbed. As we interact with people, the mind gets disturbed. There are things that go into our mind with whatever we discuss. And then what happens as we sit for meditation, or as we sit for puja, or we sit for prayer, or we sit for sloka, the mind wanders away. The mind goes to think what we had discussed in the morning or what we discussed with the person yesterday. The mind gets disturbed. When we sit for puja or meditation, actually there is no interaction at all at that point of time. But the mind seems to be working overtime. In fact, when we are physically working, the mind might be not completely active because we will be focused on the work, hopefully. But if it is a work that is actually coming naturally to us, the mind will also be working overtime even then. But typically what we need to do is to sit idle. If we sit idle for some time, we can see that the mind is working overtime. We can see the mind getting wandering around. And sometimes the mind actually feeds things into our mouth, and the mouth starts speaking to ourselves. All these things happen. Sometimes you can remember, if you remember, probably many of you will have this experience also. When we are in a shower, we will probably think a lot more thoughts come into our mind. Because when we are, shower is kind of an activity that we don't need to apply our mind too much for. So then the mind starts wandering. And controlling that mind is called as shamaha. And why does that happen? Because of chittam, the memory that has been built. Whatever we have gathered in memory, the chittam, the mind will bring it back from the subconscious to the conscious mind, and it starts exploring. And it starts creating anxiety, it starts creating fear, it starts creating jealousy, it starts creating anger, it starts creating hatred. All those feelings, emotions come to our mind. And our mind will start thinking about things that we do not want it to think. That is another problem. We do not have a full control of our mind. And that's why control of mind is very important. Because if the mind controls us, then we do not have any control of the thoughts that come into our mind. So this control of mind is very important. Shamaha, again we will be seeing more about Shamaha in later section also, how to control mind. In fact, there is a chapter also about meditation in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. We will see that in detail there also. So the problem is for us, the body gets enslaved, it gets comfort. In fact, what has been luxury in earlier generation has become a need now. Electricity was a luxury maybe about 60-70 years ago. Now it's a need. In fact, even air conditioning has become a need. Television, refrigerator has all become a need now. Only a few generations back it was actually a luxury. So we have made them as need now. We will have to understand what is our need, what is our luxury. For both body, sense organs as well as the mind. So how do we build this Atma Vinigraha? How do we get this? The first is tapas. So tapas means to actually voluntarily actually avoiding certain things, or not using things which we are used to. That is called as tapas, or basically getting used to things not being available, which we have always taken for granted. For example, even we may have even within our house, or we may have a favorite place, we may have a favorite chair. Everywhere we will have a mine kind of a feeling. And if I don't go there, if I don't sit there, I don't feel comfortable. So overcoming that, voluntarily taking some difficulties is actually getting some difficulties is tapas. And as I said, second one is damaha. Damaha means sense control. So in our case, we will have to identify person to person. We'll have to understand which sense is the weakest for us, where we get carried away easily. Is it that our mouth, that we talk a lot, or we gossip a lot? Is that something that we'll have to control? Is it my tongue? It gets addicted to taste. It is craving for my tasty food and others. Is it my eyes that it keeps wandering wherever it wants to go to? Is it my ears? I'm looking for actually hearing gossip, hearing about other people. Where is my weak point? What are my weak sense organs? We will have to reflect on that and then take Pratipaksha Bhavana. Suppose gossip is my weakness, then I will have to start looking to see if I can actually follow Mauna Vrata, so that I actually stop myself from speaking. Forget speaking gossip, I don't speak at all. That way I would be able to slowly reduce my gossip. Or not eating what I crave for. So even if it is in front of me, I stop myself. So initially if I have 5 pieces of it, I will stop with 2 pieces. And then later on I will not eat at all. Slowly reduce that craving. And remember, when we follow this, it need not be publicized to others. It is not for others to know. It is for our own self. It is our own self-assessment. This tapas need not be publicized. I am actually doing Maunavata, or I am actually stopped eating sugars. We need not publicize those things. Third one is Samaha. Samaha, we saw Samaha, mind control. One of the primary reasons for mind disturbance is basically our absence of Vairagya. Wherever we have Vairagya, our mind will not get disturbed. Wherever I have Ragadvesha, my mind gets disturbed. Wherever there is an attachment, wherever there is an hatred, wherever there is a strong like, wherever there is a strong dislike, that is where my mind gets disturbed. Mind thinks of objects or people which it values. The mind has its own value of certain things, of certain people, and it keeps bringing them back into our memory. And that is where the moha comes. Wherever we have placed value much higher than what it deserves, then it is called as delusion. And mind is the cause for it. If using our intellect, we overpower the mind and say, I do not value that. I do not give any value to that person or that object or that thing or that situation, then the mind will not think about it. The problem for us is we give too much respect to people and situation around us. We give too much respect to people. As in, if somebody actually ignores us, if somebody actually criticizes us, or if somebody speaks behind our back, somebody ignores us, that is the easiest one. Somebody ignores us, we take to our heart, we feel bad about it. The reason is we are giving too much importance or to respect to that other person. If we don't care about the other person, we would not feel disturbed. So this is the problem, that the mind gives too much respect to people and situation. And generally what happens is, between raga and dvesha overpowers raga. Enemies come to our mind more often than our friends. We think about them more often than our friends. Our friends we take for granted, but about our well-wishers we take for granted, so we don't think about them much. But about our people whom we don't like, we think about them more often. That's why we saw, I think Shishupala and others were thinking about Krishna more than even the bhaktas, because Shishupala and others were actually, they despised Krishna. So they kept thinking about Krishna more often. And that's why they say that when you do such thing, even that will give you punya, because you have thought about Ishvara, Bhagavan so many times, so much of times. But then unfortunately our people whom we don't like are not Bhagavan, so thinking about them will not give us any punya. It will give us only mental disturbance. So how do we do that? How do I overcome thinking about people whom I don't like, whom I consider as my enemy? Thing is, when is the biggest victory over our enemy? If we think about it, the biggest victory that we can have is when we don't think of them even for a minute, because they are not worthy enough to be thought of. And that is the time when we have actually won over them. They creating problems for our life is not, and we creating problems for them is not victory. In return, if we create problems for them, then we cannot take it for victory. In fact, our mind will not even accept, because our mind will think that we have done less than what they have done. It will never feel satisfied. It will never feel happy. It will never feel contented. Whatever we do, we will forget. Whatever they have done for us, only we will remember. So the mind will never be happy by saying that I have actually given back to them. I have actually taken my vengeance on them. That will never happen. To go through that path, to go through that route is foolishness. The only way we can win over them is only when we think they are not worthy enough. But what we do the opposite. we keep thinking about them. We keep bringing it back into our mind again and again. And by doing so, we do not give ourselves the freedom to do what we want. We get trapped. So having this feeling of not giving too much of respect to people and situation is important. And by that we will be able to control our mind. Then the next one is dhyanam, meditation. Meditation is an important sadhana for us to overcome this. Sometimes what happens is, we may have this Vairagya on this object, but our mind keeps going back to it. For example, I might have actually overcome this craving for, say, a particular sweet or an ice cream. But my mind, if it keeps going back and again and again, I know that I will not eat it, but my mind keeps thinking about it. And how do I overcome that? I do it. I have to practice it. I'll have to practice meditation. Why I am doing it? Because of the practice, that habit that I have actually built on that. So the mind keeps thinking again and again because of its habit. So there is something good there and bad there. The mind bringing back that thought again and again is good for good things. For example, if I am doing a Vedanta Vichara and I have studied a concept in Vedanta, and my mind keeps thinking it, bringing it back again and again, is good, because then I am actually reflecting on it. I am actually able to understand the subject. But if it is actually something bad, and if my mind keeps bringing it back again and again, then it will bring only sorrow. So while Vedanta Vichara, that abhyasa will bring me joy, this thinking of persons whom I don't like, or thinking of things that I don't want to have in my life, that I want to have Vairagya over, thinking about them will only bring me sorrow. So we have to overcome that, we'll have to practice meditation. There are many types of meditation. We had seen them in the introduction to Vedanta itself. There are 4 types of meditation. We'll see again in the 6th chapter of Gita also. We'll talk about meditation there. But basically, dhyanam is about bringing the body and mind into stillness initially, and to chant some nama. One of the best way to overcome even the mind wandering, the mind gets as I said, when we are sitting idle, or when we are in a shower, or when we are doing something which is monotonous or regular, or something that is very easy for us. For example, some cooking. Some ladies can cook thinking about so many things. They can actually know how much they have put, all those things. So the mind keeps wandering. And to stop the mind from wandering only, in those days, they used to say, chant the slokas that you know, or do nama japa. The best thing is to do nama japa. If we keep doing nama japa, then whenever we are idle, whenever we are sitting, we have nothing else to do, instead of looking into the phone, when you are able to do the nama japa, or when we are walking, when we are doing something mundane activity, when we do nama japa, we will be able to control our mind. The mind has to be taught. The mind has to go through its practice. And that's where consistency becomes more important. So practicing this consistently is important. It is not that one day I sit and then do a lakh japa, and then the next day I don't do any japa at all for the next few months. It doesn't help. Every day consistently we'll have to do japa. Every day consistently we'll have to do prayer or parayana, those things, meditation. Consistency is more important than intensity. And we will have to give some separate time for mind. Just as we give separate time for our body, for taking care of our body, we wash our body every day, we ensure that we put on nice makeup, we are giving the body the attention, the time, for our hair, for our face, for our eyes, for our ears. We give special attention for all these parts of the body. Similarly, for the mind as well, we'll have to give it some separate time, some quality time. And for that quality time is either in the form of dhyana, meditation, or in the form of nama japa, or doing nama japa in a meditative pose. And we will give enough reasons for ourselves to stop dhyanam also. We will tell them, initially we will sit, then we say, okay, my legs are paining, I'm not able to sit cross-legged. This, or we can say the mind keeps wandering. And then we say, this dhyanam is not for me. I am not fit for this dhyanam. I will do something else. That should not be the case. As I said, initially difficulties will be there. We'll have to overcome them. And as we practice, we will be able to achieve. The mind has to be maintained, just like we maintain our car. Any objects that we use, any objects, any instruments that we use, we maintain them. Whether it is our car, our house, anything that we have in our possession that we use regularly, we maintain. The same thing goes for mind as well. Mind is an extremely important instrument, and therefore it needs to be maintained. And when we are talking about the mind being calm, the mind can be calm only if you have some other good values. The mind can be calm only if it has shanti. Shanti is patience, forbearance, and forgiveness, kshama. The mind can be calm only if it doesn't have matsarya. Only if it's able to do dhanam. Only if it has got that vinayam. Otherwise, when we have the mind superiority complex, the mind will keep thinking high of itself, the mind gets disturbed. So by having good values, automatically the mind gets calmer. So building good values is important to calm the mind as well. Mind won't be calm if we have greed, if we have jealousy, if we have anger, if we have hatred. The mind will not be calm. And typically, if we do not have a calm mind, even sleep will be difficult. And if by not having a proper sleep, our physical body will also suffer. So having a calm mind is very important. And building the calm mind is mainly through having good values. So having this is very important. So with this, we have completed 9 values. So what are the 9 values? Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Shanti, Arjavam, Acharyopasanam, Soucham, Stairyam, Atma Vinigraha. So with that, we have completed 9 values. In the next class, we will take on Shloka number 9 and we will see more values there. Any questions or comments? If not, okay, we'll see again in the next class.
Sir,
Yeah.
we're learning the values, but lot of times, as you said, that we become lazy or we get so used to comfort, we don't do the. So it is. I don't know. Earlier I used to get up, I had the energy, but now it is the season or what, I don't know. I just can't get up and do the morning diya and whatever I was doing so regularly earlier. So how do we do that? Okay, it's very simple to say that control the mind, but it is not easy to do it.
No, it is not easy. We'll have to start small. Suppose if we have been waking up at 7:30 every day, and then from tomorrow onwards, I should not take on saying that I'm going to wake up at 4:30 every day from tomorrow. That will not work. Next day, probably I might wake up at 4:30 after keeping an alarm, but then the very next day I will falter, and then soon I will not even follow what I want to do. I might give up on things. So we have to understand where we stand and then take on some easy achievable targets. So if it is 7:30 today, tomorrow I should say, okay, from tomorrow I'm going to wake up from 7:15 or 7 o'clock, and then I will have to practice that for a few months. Then once I'm comfortable with 7, I should then move it to 6:15, 6:30, 6:45. Whatever works for me, I will have to take small steps. If you want to become jnani overnight, it will not happen. If I want to control my mind overnight, it's not possible. Controlling the mind is very difficult. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, Arjuna will say, Chanchalam hi manah kritva. He will say to Bhagavan, my mind it's always in chanchala. I can even probably control the mind. It's very difficult to control. And Bhagavan also will agree and accept. He will say, yeah, it is very difficult to control. And he will say, only through abhyasa and vairagya you will be able to do it. What is abhyasa? Practice. And how do we practice? We take achievable targets and then we try to follow them. And we do not give up easily on that. And then Vairagya. Vairagya is basically a dispassion. To say, okay, I'm able to practice through tapas. We already gave some tips for it. And then we'll have to apply those in our life. It is not easy. Definitely it's not easy. But it can be practiced. People have done it. And it can be done.
Thank you.
Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimayishaha Gobrahmanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Hari Om. Sri Guru. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.